Hey everybody! First off, I want to thank PAX Online and you, the audience, for giving us the opportunity to take an insider look into music and gaming. Millions have seen Travis Scott in Fortnite and John Legend in The Wave, and now music and gaming are beginning to merge like never before. I have the pleasure to present this panel with three incredible musicians and gaming industry veterans. First, I have Uyanga, a vocalist for industry-leading games like Ghost of Tsushima, Legends, League of Legends, Overwatch, and even featured in her own East-West sound library. As a music geek, so unbelievably cool. Thank you, Uyanga, for joining us.
Jason, thank you for having me.
Second, we have Shota Nakama, guitarist, composer, and founder of the video game Orchestra. He has traveled the world performing iconic video game music to millions. Shota has also recorded the music for blockbuster games, including a personal favorite of mine, Final Fantasy, with credits in 12, 13, 14, and 15. Shota has also worked on a recent title, No Straight Rose. Check it out. Shota, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Third, we have Joe Cataldo, a composer and sound designer who specializes in producing hybrid scores for games and is owner of Mad Wave Audio. His credits include Archer, Danger Phone, Terminator Salvation, a VR game, the 13 remake by Ubisoft, Last Night, and a new game, Blind Fate Ido no Yami, and much more. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jason, for having me. This is going to be great.
And my name is Jason Parks. As a musician, I'm a woodwind player, professionally an entertainment producer, and CEO of ROTU Entertainment, which is an immersive media studio currently releasing a VR game called Rhythm of the Universe Ionia. ROTU has a booth at PAX Online. If any listeners want to learn more, check us out. So I would love to start out by diving more into our backgrounds in gaming and music. The introduction is just the tip of the iceberg when you dive into our careers. We have come a long way from Berklee College of Music as students almost a decade ago. So Shota, would you start us off by letting our audience know more about you, your accolades, and anything you're currently working on?
Yeah, I guess like the PAX community probably knows me more about me than myself. We performed at PAX so many times, particularly PAX East. We've done Prime once, twice, I think. But yeah, like almost every year we performed at PAX East, and I've done the video game orchestra thing, and we've been fortunate to be featured every time. So that's great. Hopefully we can do something this year too. But yeah, I forgot the question. This is gonna go well. Sorry,
no
guys.
worries. No, just
Right.
tell us a little more about your background.
Yes.
Also, I know you have a studio as well. What have you been
Yeah.
working on?
Okay, I'm gonna talk about the PAX after. So my name is Shota Nakama. I'm from this little island called Okinawa. If you know where that is, it's a small island in south of Japan. And I grew up there and hoping to be a rock star someday, inspired by the music of Deep Purple. And that was when I was 15, and I didn't go to high school. I dropped out from everything and just kept playing in bands. And I got the GED, came over to the US to study music, and eventually I landed in the Berklee College of Music, where we all met. And that kind of started the whole thing. And I started a video game orchestra while I was there. And then since then, like we just landed on gigs and fortunately, and PAX East was one of the very first conventions we played at. And I messaged Kahil, who was managing the musical acts back then. And he's like, oh, cool. Like, do you want to just play? And I'm like, sure, why not? And we just played. And since then, PAX has been very generous to feature us almost every year. So I'm here. I'm fit right into the community. So great to be back in this format as well.
Nice. How did you get working on the Final Fantasy series?
Everybody asks me that. so I'll tell you. So I was back in 2012, somewhere around then, I was at this anime convention called Anime Central in Chicago. And at the same time, Masashi Hamauzu, the composer of Final Fantasy XIII, was there as well. And we bonded like And every night we just went out, eat, drink, and it was just really fun. And I remember him talking briefly about some projects he's working on. And after we parted ways, and he messaged me from Japan saying, "Hey, do you want to work on the project I was talking about?" And I didn't know what it was because he didn't tell me. So I'm like, sure, because we say yes to everything, right? Particularly us. I think we just say yes to everything. We just promise and deliver. And so I said yes. And he's like, when is next time you come to Japan? And I said, whenever you want me to. He's like, okay, come to this address this time. I went, and the address was Square Enix. And I got escorted to this meeting with the audio director. And it was just like, it was kind of surreal because I didn't even know about that at all. And Masashi Hamauzu was like, so you're going to be working on Lightning Returns. Do you want to? And I'm like, why would I say no? So yes. Yeah, so that's how I landed on the gig. It was very random, but it was through networking.
Yeah, I think we can all agree networking is probably one of the most important parts about this job, especially
For
in
sure.
music.
Mm-hmm.
What an unbelievable story. It must have been like a shock when you showed up at the address, and I was like, wait, is this the right address?
Yeah, exactly. It was like such a gigantic building. And I was like,
Yeah.
where is this? Square Enix.
And usually they keep it very, how to say, like private. They don't want to show off that the company is there for fear of like, you know, like any other media company, they don't super advertise their headquarters. So it must have been even more, you know, amazing when you realized where you actually were.
Yeah. So I went straight after the meeting. I went straight to their shop and just bought a bunch of things.
I like a fan. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Uyanga, could you dive in a little more about your background? I mean, it's been just a pleasure following your career. More things than we could possibly ever acknowledge in just this panel. But if you could dive into some of the favorite things you've done and anything that you're working on right now.
Yeah, my name is Uyanga Bold. I'm from Mongolia, created in Moscow, and spent half my life in Switzerland, and then came to Berkeley, Boston, to study music. But I came to America wanting to study, U.S. music, jazz and R&B and all of that. And then people were like, no, what you do, like Mongolian roots and the ethnic stuff, that's where it's really cool. And then I got persuaded, and when I was in school, I happened to show some Mongolian singing to Gabriel from ROTU, and he happened to say, hey, we have that concert at Boston Symphony with the video game orchestra opening for Alan Silvestri, right, with the Anthem of the World. And then at there, some producers saw me for this concert that he was putting on in Bucharest with the symphony orchestra there, and he's like, oh, can you come and record? And we recorded, and he's like, oh, great, can we come into Bucharest and sing with this orchestra there? And they did, and that video got tens of millions of views, so it made it a little bit easier to for people to find me versus me going out there to finding people. Mm-hmm. You know, I was very lucky that it was a masterpiece experience. And some highlights, recently Mulan came out on streaming in Disney, so I was very fortunate to work on it and provide some vocals, and be invited to Harry Gregson Williams' studio and do that here in Santa Monica, and also worked on this Spider-Man Marvel's animation, Maximum Venom, and we did a lot of vocals for that. And this was during COVID, so we did it remotely, you know, and with Sandro Morales, and he composed incredible music for that. And also it was really fun to do the vocal library. There was a lot of recording, just just like very like detail oriented, work, and that was really a beautiful experience. And East West Sounds has been so good to me in their studios, and they've been really kind enough to use their studios for different projects. So I'm very grateful to them. And I've also sang on the main theme of and the name of the TV show is Motherland Fort Salem. And it's about these witches that use their voices to affect reality around them. So I help do all the vocal sounds. And it's really cool to see, like, first of all, seeing the theme, you hear your voice in the theme, like, oh my gosh, you're freaking out on the TV. And then also seeing the spells, when it's growing, it's like, oh, that's my voice, and this plant is growing, whatever, so these vocal spells are really fun. That's what comes to mind at the moment.
Oh man, well, I mean, it's pretty incredible journey you've had. Would you mind talking a little more about how did you even get introduced to the gaming world? Really, like when did you what was your first game that you were on, and then how did you continue to do more?
The first game I was on, I believe it was League of Legends. Yeah.
That's a great first game to be on.
Yeah, thanks to also a Berkeley graduate, Edouard Breneisen. And he invited me to do one of their live anthems. And then he invited me to do subsequently 2 different character logins, Nico and Zayan and Rakam. So that was fun.
Oh man, incredible. Well, I want to dive a little more into that later, but before, Joe, if you could talk a little more about yourself and your background, what are you doing? I know you got a bunch of games in the pipeline. Anything you could tell us about?
Yeah, in the specific, there is a game that I believe is going to be also at PAX in this online format called Blind Fate Edo no Yami, which is a cyberpunk samurai. Super cool. It just got announced today, actually, so I don't even know how much I can say about it. I was like secretly looking at the Steam page, so to make sure that what I share with you, it's in line with what they're saying. In terms of my background, wow! First of all, oh my God, Uyanga, what a crazy story! Like you too, like amazing, like jumpstart career. But I mean, I known you since Berkeley. You totally deserve it. Your voice is so unique. I'm glad that even if you came to US to study jazz and more American music, that you kept your roots and you kept developing your style. Truly a gem. Her voice is truly a gem that we needed as a sample, but also like in real life. My background in video games started when I realized that it was actually a viable career. I had no idea. It's something that I always did as a kid. I loved to hack games and put my music and my sounds in it. And let's say 10, 15 years ago, video games did not used to have any kind of like encrypted sound banks, or they would just come on CD-ROMs, and you will install the game and there would be just a folder called audio or sound effects. So you could easily go in there and replace the audio files that were in that folder with the same identical naming scheme with different audio. You could completely swap audio for games. And I spent endless summers with my friends just doing that. A couple of games I can mention. We had fun swapping sounds or creating a new one where Worms Armageddon, the little turn-based war game, and we were like put silly games, maybe from more violent games like Carmageddon or any shooter games of that time. And so it was just a way to have fun. But in practice, in retrospective, I realized I was kind of creating mods in terms of audio and remastering and recreating music for sound design. And so it was only until I actually moved to US then I realized that no, wait a minute. This is actually a job. Creating sounds and music for games is a viable career. And that's when I started dedicating myself just to that. It started with I have to be honest, everything started with a few small indie projects that I was fortunate to be friends with the team, and they really became extremely popular when they were brought to the public attention. And so one thing led to another, similar to Uyanga experience and Shota experience. You start becoming friends with some of these key figures in the industry, and just out of mutual respect and just the liking to spend time together on long-term projects creates some kind of trust that then wants some of this game director and game producer to work with you because you kind of proved that you're a person that you're cool to work with, and you have the skills, you have the talent, and so it becomes a natural transition to find a project that it's a good match to collaborate. In terms of some of the projects, one of my first project that really was under the spotlight was The Last Night, the cyberpunk pixel art game that kind of went crazy, I believe, in 2017 when announced at the Xbox press release. And then after that, I worked on obviously that opens a few doors, and with the Terminator VR experience, with the Archer game, a few other games that are not announced yet, but it all becomes some kind of snowball effect. So my story is not that different than all of yours, guys. If there is something particular that you want to know, but that's more or less the same process.
Well, I'm a big fan of anything VR, as you all know. So I'd love to hear more about Terminator Salvation VR game. I mean, maybe a little more detail as to how that all happened and why pursue a VR game? Why jump on it? Just because it was there, or did it particularly interest you as a challenge musically and as a game audio designer?
Definitely VR is exciting, and I have to share a cool story. When I used to be in Boston, I was kind of jealous that everyone had a chance to work on VR project at the time, and all my projects were regular 3D games. So boring, oh my God. Because there was so much focus on audio. What really this new, not new wave of VR, because I'm saying that because obviously VR was a technology that had been around for quite some time. It was just not the right time in terms of market, and the technology was super expensive. So when we had this new wave of serious company getting into VR and developing it, a lot of focus was shift on audio, something that usually in game is not like the highest priority. And so we had a lot of company really spending time and resources in researching and developing positional audio, spatial audio, new algorithms, new systems to really immerse the play into audio. So obviously all of that is exciting. And in VR, all of that is not just needed, it's essential to create a realistic and immersive experience. So I wanted to be involved. I'm talking about like 2015, 2016. I really wanted to be involved with anything that had to do with VR. And probably my very first VR project only came with XIII VR. It's a very popular shooter simulation kind of sandbox. It's called Horseshoes, Hot Dog, and Hand Grenades. It's a kind of a little bit of a joke, silly parody name because the game is actually non-violent at all, although it's a weapon simulation. And so in that, I really had a chance to start understanding and testing and experimenting with everything VR in terms of technology, and combine that with Terminator, which has been a franchise I've been always a great fan since a kid. Back in Italy, where I come from, I still have a little poster of Terminator 2, when poster used to be the one that you draw by hands, those hand-drawn drawing that would be obviously digitized and print on large scale. So when when the right chance came to work on a project that VR and the Terminator franchise, I was like, yeah, I am in. Plus it's an action franchise, so you get to do sci-fi, weapons, monsters, robots, action music, all that stuff. Is super fun to work on.
Yeah, what else do you want? Yeah.
Yeah, what else? Yeah, like what else are you asking? Like there is nothing else that you can ask.
So I think it's pretty clear that networking is this theme across all of our careers. So anybody listening, make sure you maintain those relationships and reach out and keep working. And to dive in a little bit of why I'm excited about the the group we're talking about right now, the three of you, and how it incorporates into my background. I had the pleasure of going to Berklee College of Music and starting a group called Rhythm of the Universe. It later turned into a company called ROTU Entertainment, where we brought musicians from over 100 countries and thousands of musicians together, and we produce a series of projects, lots of transmedia, everything from live shows, music videos, documentaries, and at the time, Uyanga, you mentioned a little earlier about that Symphony Hall performance. Before ROTU was ever a company and it was just still this student project, we had made a music video where 90 musicians from 90 different countries came together and wrote a song apiece. We literally had citizens of countries that were at war with each other sitting at a table writing this song together. They had to change their name in fear of retribution. That show ended up turning into a live show that was performed on Symphony Hall stage. Uyanga was one of our solo artists, one of the most iconic aspects of our music video and our live performances. And then Shota, his orchestra, performed on stage and was the primary instrumental group that was producing the entire night. And we also had the privilege of being there with Alan Silvestri, a famous film composer who did Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, and countless other movies. Countless.
The whole Marvel,
records.
Avengers.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, more than I can ever list. And that led us to creating a company called ROTU Entertainment, where we worked with nonprofits to produce all sorts of projects, all sorts of transmedia. Particularly, my team was able to travel to the Peruvian Amazon, where we filmed the illegal gold mining and deforestation happening there. Then we made a music video with international body of children singing a choir about this effort we have and how we have to save the Amazon. We made a music video with it, and then we also made a documentary called Mercury Uprising, which was seen at COP20 and COP21, the United Nations conferences that helped spark the Paris Climate Agreement. And from this, my background's very different than everyone else here. While I'm trying to manage this company and find more opportunities for us to work with these nonprofits and to continue to create content, we started to develop this story, this IP, this big universe that we called Rhythm of the Universe. And in this, we created what we call music mythology, where we're turning music theory, instruments, everything that encompasses music, and we turned that into lands, people, ecosystems, game mechanics, storyline arc, and we had this giant universe that we wanted to tell. And I wasn't ever thinking about making games, but when I tried the HTC Vive for the first time, I believe back in early 2015, I put on the Vive, I saw a giant whale go by in the game The Blue, and I ripped off the headset and I said, oh, this is what I'm doing with the rest of my life. And we very quickly found incredible talent, incredible developers that had worked at Valve and Capcom, and we found the resources needed to move forward with making a game based around that giant IP, that giant universe that we had come up with. And so I'm proud to say we now are releasing this year Rhythm of the Universe Ionia, which is the first episode in a series of VR games. And this first one's based around environmentalism and animal habitat conservation, where in the game, you and your sister Allegra are going through the Ionian forest, and you actually have to save these giant musically inspired creatures using music theory superpowers, which we call Modus powers. And and that then ties in Joe, who has come in and a big part of our sound design. And ultimately, this entire panel helped inspire or directly worked with us to create this VR game. So it's a pleasure to speak with all of you and have you come together and us share a big passion of ours, which is music. So I'd love to tie that into us jumping into what makes music in games exciting for us, right? We all come from different perspectives. So, for example, music and audio development for VR titles are completely different than what you had to do for VR games. for regular games just a few years ago. So, from the panel, let's open it up. What are some thoughts, any favorite things that you've worked on or things that you've seen that really define where music is going in gaming?
I guess I'll take the first lead. So No Straight Rose, for example, it's a music game essentially. So this evil EDM empire, not that EDM is evil, just so you guys know. So there's two rock musicians, guitar player and drummer. They are fighting against the evil guy from the EDM empire, and literally, like when you shoot a bullet, then it's a note, like notes come out, and then like you attack the people. So yeah, that's how the game is. So without the music, the game doesn't exist. And also the developer company that made the game is called Metronomic, which kind of implies that it's a musical. It's a company that deeply cares about the music and audio. Yeah, and so this was such a big part, and I did some guitar and just monitored the whole production as well. But we had huge talents involved in this, and so famous guitar players involved in this, and they're all shredding, so that they can all defeat the evil empire.
So I love how that where it's sort of similar to ROTU, where you're having this this interpretation of actual music or performance of music and turning it into the storyline and creating game mechanics from that. I love that, and you see more and more of that.
Right.
I mean, for example, one of the most successful VR game of all time, Beat Saber, right, is taking elements of some of our favorite rhythm games, but then just completely redefining it and having giant blocks fly at you and giving you lightsabers. Who doesn't want lightsabers, right? And created created an environment where you can compete with other people. You can get better very slowly and gradually, and find yourself doing maps and songs that you never thought possible. So it sort of reminds me of back in the day of going to the bowling alley and doing Dance Dance Revolution, right? And just taking it to the next level, and then adding a lot more on top. I mean, there's so much changing in the world right now for music and gaming.
Right, and also not just games, but also for the visual media. I think it's all about stimulating your senses. So games can stimulate obviously the visuals, like your vision, and also the touch, because you are playing, so you're indirectly touching the game. But then by adding music, then you can stimulate your hearing sense as well, and more the merrier. Then your brain reacts to that in certain way, and it becomes more immersive. The entire experience becomes
especially with interesting sounds, new sounds. I think there was a study done where when you hear a sound you've never heard before, your brain goes, what is that, right? Then you pay more attention versus hearing a sound you've heard all your life.
Like your voice.
Or Japanese instruments, exotic instruments. I think I grew up playing video games like Alpha Centauri, those strategy games. And then also when I was my first year at Berkeley, I was, playing OG World of Warcraft, Well, StarCraft and all of those also, but like the first, person when you go online and the multiplayer world. And I just remember it felt like the music was such a big part of it. And you're roaming these planes, because back then you used to walk so much, and you're hearing these music play over and over. And it was such a part of the journey, right? It becomes the soundtrack of the experience within the world, and this avatar character becomes me, and I'm there, and it just becomes part of my world. And I still miss, sometimes I'll be walking somewhere and I'm like, I miss walking in this forest with pink trees, whatever, and the soundtrack would come with it, right? Because it becomes part of it, right? And I thought, who are these people that get to work on such experiences? Because ultimately, for me, video games as well as visual media is a means of storytelling, and it's a means of immersive storytelling. And humans have been telling stories since the dawn of time, and it's a way of transmitting wisdom, knowledge, carrying on our experiences from one human to another, right? So it's such a tremendous privilege that we get to support that, right? And to write the new stories of our age, of our time, right? And do it in a kind of a collective way, because these ideas of the music, right, the notes coming out of the bullets as bullets, or saving the forests with music, right, or these 3D versions of these AI that take over the world, right? Joe, like all of these are these stories that are rising today, right, from our collective consciousness, and we're making it such that we're interacting with these stories, and we're finding ourselves, where do I stand around these subjects? Environmental conservation, right? AI coming. These are big decisions that we are making right now and in the coming years, and especially, teens and younger generation, as they grow up, interacting, their worldview is formed by this, So I think it's also a tremendous responsibility, and of course the music is gonna inform how we feel about that, right? I'll never forget, I was in this panel once, and this composer talked about, okay, so this scene is coming up. Do I foreshadow the intentions of the main character, right, by adding kind of an ominous note, or do I let the audience discover later, right? There's a lot of responsibility in artistic choices that we get to, right? The narrative choices that we take, That's a lot of words.
Spot on. That's what we need the panel to be.
I think both Uyanga and Shota are right on the topic. It's a tricky question. It's like why there should be music in the game or in a movie. So like a guy's like running, chasing someone. Why there is to be music? But in reality, as they both mentioned, music has a very, very, very delicate and important storytelling role, because it can just underline and reinforce the emotion that we see on the screen, be it a movie or a video game, can tell its own story, something that it's a different storyline, completely different, something that you might discover only at the end, as again, Uyanga was mentioning from that talk, or can give some hints to the player or the spectator of a movie by contrast. Maybe there is a love scene, but there is a very ominous, dark music, so something starts to tell you. Maybe there is some unknown happening, some secrets that I'm not aware of. So it's a very powerful storytelling role that music has. And so I'm very fascinating in terms of what's happening right now in video game. What has been happening in video game is that actually this approach has been fully integrated into games, just like it used to be with movies. And the budget have also been risen and brought up to the point where these kind of things can be done now in video games too. It's not just something that used to happen in like blockbuster movies, especially because considering that it's an interactive medium, now finally games can do something that the movie cannot, and really have multiple storylines or complex narrative that change based on your behavior. If it's obviously if it's an RPG game, like in the way that you play the game. I think there was already like some time ago a Splinter Cell where you could, I believe it's a Splinter Cell, where you could play it as like killing everyone or be more stealthy, and the music will completely change, more like some kind of James Bond music versus some more actiony music. And also another great thing that you mentioned that I wanted to bring up, Uyanga, was the how great sound can direct your attention. And I feel that's extremely important, even more in VR. In video games, the player is kind of the director. Like we give up, as creator, we give up the camera control to the player. So sounds really, in a story-driven game, it's extremely important to while leaving some choice to the player to still direct him through the story so that the narrative threads make sense. So sounds can really focus attention in some particular moment of the game, be it some very dramatic music or specific sounds. And all of this becomes even more important in VR because the first experience of in VR is that just you want to look around, that you might be not focusing on where the action is supposed to be. So a very well placed sound or a sound cue can make sure that you're looking at the right directions and paying attention to the right things. And not to be biased, I really love what we're doing with the Rhythm of the Universe, ROTU. I mean, the blend between music and sounds and cinematics, and cinematic looking moments. It's amazing. And so sounds really needs to help to direct the story and push it forward. So those are the things that excite me. The taking everything that great movie soundtracks have done and bring it into a medium that now it's fully interactable, modular, and responsive to player action.
I'm right there with you, Joe. You, all three of you, spot on as the future of music and where it's going and what it already is. I mean, just to tie on a little bit of what Joe said with Ionia is that, when has it ever been where you can put on a headset, you're now in a space, right? You're in a dimensionalized space, and then you have to take into consideration all of the audio and sound aspects. Like, you can't just have audio just be omnipresent anywhere, right? It has to be directional, right? It won't work.
Yeah,
There's all these new rules and all these new storytelling techniques that we have to discover. And one of my favorite new little things that we're adding is we have these special little bell plants all throughout the game. And if you take your head and you get really close, you'll actually hear it sort of tooting at you. But you would never know that unless you sort of found that little Easter egg, right? So spoiler alert for anybody that plays. We'll have a demo available at PAX, by the way. So if you're listening to this panel and it's during PAX, go check out Rhythm of the Universe Ionia and you can give it a try. But ultimately,
it really changed the approach to create ambiances in games. Before, I mean, it's already a little bit like that in 3D first-person games. You have some kind of base bed of ambience that kind of describes the environment that you're in, and then you have a bunch of point source emitters that add more variety, and probably they have some randomized elements. But in VR, the whole environment is actually built of individual elements that you need to place in the environment, because you don't really know if the player is going to put their ears close to an object, or if they're going to crouch or stand, or try to look above something. And so you really have to place the elements where visually they would be in real life, or real life in a fantasy world, compared to before. We can take an example. Let's say a car in a 3D game. The source emitter will be just placed in the center of that 3D model. Now you probably want to place the sounds of the wheels where the four wheels are, the engine where the engine is, if it's a front engine, back engine. Otherwise, it might not make sense anymore in VR. So it definitely opens up for some new creative possibilities and challenges in terms of managing all this content.
Yeah, definitely. And what you're talking about, Jason, the idea of this Easter egg, you get closer, right? It has this sound you could hear, right? Tooting at you, as you called it. I remember I was invited to sing at this augmented reality experience, but I think they closed down in San Francisco, called One Dome. And one of the whole idea was that you go into this Unreal Garden and you wear this augmented reality headset, right? And you go and there are these plants and these flowers, and they get your attention by sound, right? Like something behind me, I turn around, right? And it was used also as a subtly teaching how your attention, if you focus it, it becomes useful. Like you would need to look at something for a little while. When you look at something, there's a little yellow ball in front of you, and the more you look at it, it coalesces, and then you're able to interact with something, right? And that came with the sound, of course, right? So these moments, it makes it feel way more in the body, because if it's just a light, it's cool. But if I'm hearing it and it's vibrating in my body, then it feels like I'm deeply immersed in it, right? I love all that. And also another aspect, I think maybe the future of gaming. I'm excited to see more customization. I think Joe, you touched upon the subject of, depending on the storyline, different a whole other kind of music can come in, James Bondish or not, right? And it was really interesting when we were working on this video game. It's going to come up, Magic Legends. It's the MMO version of this card player game, and how do we make it interesting that when each time you go to this section, we would record different versions of me improvising, for example, and each time you go there, it's gonna loop it so that it's gonna vary each time that you go there, a different vocal phrase, right? Mm-hmm. So things like that was like really interesting for me to be on the inside, right? Understand, okay, this is why we do that, this is what's going on. And I would love to see more of that, more customization, more interesting sounds, right?
And choices, right? Yeah,
exactly, choices. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially the more we go into 3D, you're creating reality. Really, you're like a little bit like gods, right? Let's not even go into the fact that we're probably living in a simulation, but that's
right.
That different palette.
Technologically, I'm curious to see like where it's going to, because the interactive music is going to be, the interactivity is going to be better. Like we can't deny that it's gonna be so good in like, let's say like even down like 1 year, 2 years, it's gonna be crazy. So because the source separation technology is quite mature now, and with the machine learning and neural net, it's getting better every day. So eventually, maybe we don't even have to program. We don't have to like program the way we do things now, and we could probably like. The game might study what you pay attention to more, and that triggers the source separation accordingly. That could happen, and that would be like a lot more interesting than what's happening now too, because like it just studies you and then like sort of like customizes the experience just for you, and that I can't wait to see that.
I don't think it's too far away in terms of time either. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but most headset now have eye tracking, so they can feed their data back to the developers, and they can use that exactly as Shota was saying to learn on what you're focusing on when you are like paying attention, when you're bored, so they can customize the experience to keep your attention level high. But yeah, as Shota was saying, the level of interactivity and and responsive music, the technology is already there. I would say right now, what's challenging it's to execute that for smaller team, because obviously, as Uyanga said, there is a lot of re-recording, variations, additional takes, additional melodies that needs to be recorded to make so that every time let's say you walk in a certain area of the game, you don't just hear the same music track starting at the same point every time. So that obviously requires a bigger budget to execute that. But what I'm personally curious to see, and I'm wondering if Shota has seen anything like that, is the more not machine learnings, but the sample modeling, to the point that some engines now can have instruments that actually play in real time in the game. It's not pre-recorded music. So I'm really curious to see how that is going to play with the usual techniques that we use to create interactive music, to adjust and really respond and even modify the music according to the player input, the choices that the player makes, or if you're in VR, based on where he pays attention and what he likes and doesn't like, by studying his eye movements and the pupils dilatation. If it's like paying attention, exciting about something, or bored, that's gonna be like interesting to see how it develops.
Yeah, and I can't move on until I just also acknowledge how incredible it is that we are also starting to blend gaming with actual live performance, right? We didn't even touch on, music is such a vast genre of potential topics, right? That we had the largest concert ever in Fortnite, right? How incredible is that? I mean, where you
very
can,
unique,
right? Exactly. And then we've just had recently John Legend in the Wave, and you can either on TikTok or via a VR headset be able to experience it, and it's almost better than live entertainment in a lot of ways. I definitely don't condone it replacing live entertainment. If anything, we should all be working very hard to get back to a place where live musicians are supported, live performances are still attended. We definitely, as a society, need to make sure that continues to happen. But we can expand on it, and we can give musicians this new avenue, this new way to engage an audience. And it's for me, it's incredible to see that happening. And that's it's something that everyone should be aware of.
Yeah, I don't see it. Please go ahead.
No, like I was gonna say, like, because I produce live shows, and we've done online shows, and the situation now is like, when Napster came into the picture of the music industry, it destroyed the whole thing. But like then, like we saw the emergence of the new platforms, the iTunes, iPod, it's obsolete now, but iPod and everything. Then it became more competitive and more interesting. Mm-hmm. And now Spotify is out there too, and Tidal, and all those great platforms.
Love Tidal.
They're out there. Yeah, Tidal, especially because the quality is so much higher. Yeah, and that's what we care about, right?
Musician nerds.
Musicians. Yeah. So yeah, and I think the COVID situation that really, like, it kind of destroyed, it made the ground flat, but now is a chance for the new things to pop up, and the online concert thing, also Fortnite concert thing. That's a great way to entertain people, and I think combination with VR, I think might be the virtual concert might become very mature, flourished. Yeah. So that should be your next gig, Jason.
But also, just like Spotify, while it disrupted a little bit of the major label business, it also gave a chance to more unknown, smaller bands to publish their music pretty much for free. You pay a DistroKid or a CD Baby subscription, like for $30, you can release your music. When before that would be not possible. You had to have like a major label contract to have your music distributed worldwide.
Right.
Small bands were never had any chance like that. So I feel like the VR could do the same thing. There is some relatively famous band that I used to follow as a kid, American bands that, despite being quite successful, they never had enough, of a following to actually fly all the way to Europe and have concerts in Italy. And so, I don't think it's just disruptive. It could also allow for fans in some areas where, let's say, no mainstream bands would never have a chance to have a tour to be seen in this virtual live environment. So there's definitely some advantages of that, just like you were mentioning, Shota, about you bringing a new platforms as some of the advantages too.
Yeah, and in Brazil, actually, people are doing something interesting. All the pop stars are doing good online concerts. So what they're doing is they pre-record everything except themselves. I don't want to say anything bad about drummers or like guitar players, but when a pop star is there, the pop star matters more, right?
Of course, it's
the pop star is the only person who's actually live, which is why there's no latency issues, and fans can interact with the comments, and they can do super chat, and that becomes the additional revenue source for the pop stars. So that's when the online concert is done right, I feel like. And everybody gets paid, the musicians get supported, and they get the proper exposure as well. They get credited. So that's one of the things I'm kind of looking into that as well. That's just a great modern way of doing concerts, and
it's a nice balance. It's definitely a nice balance.
Absolutely. It's semi-live, because like unfortunately you can't do full online live because of latency until somebody comes up with a great latency compensation technology. And until then, or 5G might solve this, because like our picture quality will be significantly better, and the connection will be, way faster than what it is now. So yeah, maybe that's something like we can all look into that.
Yeah, maybe Elon's Starlink, right? We all have
yeah, or that
continual internet across anywhere.
But just send it to my brain directly.
Neuralink, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did I mix those two? What's the satellite? The series of internet providing satellites that Elon has? I'm trying to.
No, you said right.
Starlink, right? And then he also has Neuralink. Oh, okay.
Neuralink is I was saying, or just send a stream from Starlink to Neuralink straight to my brain. Like I don't even have to actually see it. It's just electronic impulses.
Oh, he didn't even try and keep those dynamically different in any way, did he? Those will combine.
Straight to the source. Send music to my brain, please.
Oh man, well, again, panelists, thank you so much for taking the time. We're wrapping up here. I wanted to really briefly talk about any last points we might want to have, or any advice you might have for anyone listening that's interested in music and gaming, or have similar backgrounds to what we have, and could learn from some information. And then we can just talk a little bit about where people can find more out about us. So I would love to just start off with the bigger point I think we all made throughout this talk, was that networking is incredibly important. Just network. Whoever you work with may introduce you to someone, so make sure that you maintain relationships in a way that is meaningful to both parties, right? And be courteous to each other, even if you're not 100% happy with one of the jobs that you are on or something like that. It never hurts to just maintain that relationship, maintain that friendship, and also extend a helping hand out to those who need it.
Beautiful.
I think meaningful is the right key right there. I sometimes the stress is on networking, but I think creating meaningful connections with people that you respect and that you would like to work with, it's extremely important. And just hey, I am a composer, hear my music, or this is what I do, because eventually you might end up working with this with some friends that projects could go on for years and years. So you actually, you need to like to work with them, have them around. And this goes both ways. It's not just for the person hiring, but also for you seeking work. Make sure you don't just do like a blank networking with everyone, but seek out the collaboration that you really want to have. And if you're not ready to approach a certain client or a certain company, make sure you work toward that goal in steps, so that you yourself can actually be in a position where you're ready to add value to a certain project. That's at least how I see networking. Like I seek creative collaborations more than just, hey, I need work. That it's a little cold, and usually doesn't work in our field. We are all creatives. We are very sensitive emotions and feelings, so we can quite easily read when someone is fake, in those kind of interactions. So seek meaningful, creative collaboration. That's my idea on networking. Just to put out an advice, I would say that.
Beautiful, Joe. Building off of what you said, Tim Ferriss said, when you go to a networking event, you don't need to go quantity, but go for quality. Try to, you have one aim is to make one good friend out of this, if you can, a couple good friends, rather than, I've had this experience where people talk kind of, they look at you, but they're kind of looking behind you, that kind of thing. Like
that's a lay.
Right. So exactly. So that kind of thing is just to be mindful. And personally, I think I attribute, just being a working musician to having something kind of a unique to offer to the table, something that's not very easily accessible. Being kind of not the purple cow in a field of cows, but something a little bit. I feel like we live in a world of niches. There's
absolutely.
So knowing your niche and also capitalizing on that, working on that, leaning in even if it's your limitation, how can I make that actually a positive, right? And there's some work to be done there, personal development. And also, for me, it's been seeking out the very complicated and trying to master it, because there's always someone who needs something very complicated. And the more you go into something very difficult and complicated, the less the competition, the less just people naturally seek you out. So I've made it a point to just really study as much as possible difficult, traditional musics and things like that. And just in 1 month, I would do like Mongolian singing in French, writing like a lullaby for video in Russian, and then singing in Indian singing, and everything like Shota was saying. I would just say yes, and then I would figure out, and it would work, But it would be just all of these completely different. So if I was just singing pop, perhaps I would not get as much work, So. So variety but the masterful kind, in the sense of like try to seek the difficult.
I also imagine that's for yourself too, because we are all in this career for the long run, so you want to keep yourself engaged, interested, and make sure you don't burn out from doing always the same thing over and over and over and over. Even if you're great at doing that and people associate you with that particular thing that only you can do, over time for yourself, it's going to become repetitive. So you have to you desire to find new way to express yourself. So
exactly, well said. And following the curiosity, the profession. I think we're all musically curious. That's why we do this,
absolutely.
Right? And to follow that and see where does that take me, and then it informs everything rest and makes us better musicians overall.
So what I want to say about the networking, what I want to add to that is I consider us, four of us, being good at networking, which is probably why we are still in the industry. But just to decipher the reason why we are good at that is because, first of all, I love how international this panel is. Like, it's so diverse. And we've gone through a lot of things, a lot of experience with a lot of different cultures. So we have very broad perspective of things. And we tend to accept different cultures better, and because we've seen so many things. And so I would actually try to, not just the music, but also try to enrich your cultural understanding and inner diversity, and localize yourself so that you like really get it. And then the networking thing will come naturally, because if I know more about America, of course, like I can easily interact with people here. And if you know more about Japan, obviously it's easier. And so, yes, the key is to localize yourself.
I think that's a great point. So, as musicians, sometimes we tend to be a little narrow vision, and all we focus on is music. And that can limit ourselves and the way we understand art and creativity in general, because we focus only on one aspect that we love, and we forget about writing and poetry and visual arts of different cultures. So it's definitely a great point, and it will give you depth as a person that will help you connect in a meaningful way with friends and people in general, and beyond the scope of networking. I think that's a great advice, Shota.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for coming here and putting this together. I think this was a fantastic panel with information that a lot of the PAX Online community can value. So just to wrap it up, Uyanga, could you start off? How can people learn more about you? Where can they find more information?
Yes, thank you again for having me. Thank you for putting this together. You can find me on my website, uyangabold.com, UYANGABOLD.com, and on all the socials, on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, it's / Uyanga Music, UYANGABOLDMUSIC. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Joe, could you jump in too?
Absolutely. Fairly easy. Just my name, and that would match Joe Cataldo, JoeKatldo, will bring up old websites, social media. So if you want to get in touch with me, I'm always happy to talk about game audio, game music. And when I have time, I actually respond to emails. And that's actually fun to chat with some people that are just approaching video games, or sometimes I get emails from people that are very expert in maybe producing rock bands, but they want to get into video games. I'm always available for that. So both my website and my company website, Medwave Audio, and Joe Cataldo, you can find all the information online.
Excellent. Shota?
So if I email you, you'll write back to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow! Finally, yes. Yeah. Well, but like you guys, if you search my name, Shota Nakama, social media shows up, and you can definitely connect with me through those platforms. And my company Soundtrack, we are always seeking great talents. So if you have demos or something, send it to me through the website, please. I would love to work with you.
Well, thank you, everyone. My name's, again, Jason Parks. You can learn more about ROTU at rotu.com and any way of social media by @JasonParksVR. Again, thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen. Thank you, panelists, for being here. I really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you at future PAX events.